There's a tremendous moral imperative presented by the climate change, what we know about climate change. A moral imperative particularly for the rich world. Because here are we've grown rich and wealthy over 200 years by burning coal and oil and gas. We've had cheap energy, that's why we're wealthy. That's where most of our wealth has come from. We now realise, we didn't before, the damage it's beginning to cause. And not only damage to everybody in the world, but more in a more pronounced way, or disproportionately, to people in the developing world, particularly to the poorest in the world. So the moral imperative for us to take that on board is to say, well, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to repay the damage we have done, the damage we are still doing? Not only repay it, but how are we going to get the world on in a much fairer situation where those in the developing world who want to develop, again through cheap energy as far as they can, we've got to allow them to do that to a large extent, hopefully not to the extent that we did it. How are we going to do that? And it implies a tremendous amount more sharing between the rich world and the poor world. Not only have we got to reduce our emissions of carbon dioxide in particular as fast as we conceivably can and take action in a fairly drastic way to do that. And that can be done. I mean, and it won't cost a lot of money, actually. It's quite cheap to do, really, compared with lots of things that we do pay for. And then we've also got to use some of our wealth and our skills to help our poorer neighbours in the world adapt to the climate change that's almost upon us and try to reduce the damage that falls to them in particular, but also we've got to help them develop sustainably, develop without using fossil fuels so far as we possibly can. So that's a tremendous challenge for us, to work with them in those ways and to acknowledge our debt to them and the responsibility we have to help them. And that's a message which the whole world understands or can understand, but Christians in particular have to understand that, because loving your neighbour and taking care of God's creation, because it isn't just the poorer people who will suffer, it's also the creation. We're going to lose lots of species. We're going to lose lots of ecological life as a result of climate change.